Hello and welcome to the Cryptocurrency News channel. So we're going to discuss XRP and ODL and why I think ODL has actually been put on kind of like hiatus at this point in terms of development, as Ripple has actually pivoted strategies. Despite what they're saying that they haven't pivoted strategies, to me it's pretty clear that they have pivoted strategies. This is looking at ODL's liquidity. You can see it was really big up in June, and now since around the beginning of July, early July, it's fallen off. Had a bit of a basically comeback. This is XRP euros, and then now it's falling down again. And the same thing with the other corridors. It humped a little bit in early August, and now it's coming back down. This is not just the weekend, by the way. This is like 15 days already, so that's half a month. If you look at all the other liquidity corridors, same story. Humped a little bit in August, now it's coming down. Same thing with here. So basically, but even when it was like spiking, it's nowhere near as high as it was back in May and June. And if you are asking what happened, remember Ripple made that announcement a month or two back around this time that it actually just dropped off a cliff, that essentially they were no longer paying MoneyGram or incentivizing them to actually use ODL, so they cut off ODL usage. And so you can see the effects of that with liquidity basically dropping to really, really low numbers. And they base a lot of this on the pure exchange volume of, for instance, MXN USD, the BITSO volume, which is the preferred partner that Ripple has operating that corridor. So there's not nearly as much money flowing through that corridor anymore. So that section of ODL has basically been cut down by like 80%. So it is a liquidity problem, but it's also like, I just don't think it's actually useful for MoneyGram for most of their use of ODL, so they actually cut it off. And I know Brad Garlinghouse says like the demand is so much that they're not able to meet it. That does not look like a product whose demand is so great that they can't meet it. I think he's just trying to like make something that's not good sound a lot better, because according to these like numerical graphs of liquidity and the amount of money flowing through the exchanging using ODL from USD to MXN and other corridors have greatly dropped ever since they made the announcement that they're no longer paying or incentivizing partners to actually use them. And without that monetary incentive, without Ripple giving those partners millions of dollars each quarter, they find no reason right now to use ODL. So I think they've pivoted strategy because they realize it's going to be a lot harder than they thought, and it's going to take a lot longer than they thought. So if you're hoping for ODL to actually pump up price, that's going to take several years longer than we even formally anticipated. I already thought it was going to take several years. Now it's just going to take several more years, because you can see like they're not even close to recovering what they had back in like April, May, and June. I know Ripple also said ODL demand has increased 1,100% since last year this time. But you have to remember, last year at the time, demand was basically like zero. This was like right before or around the time they signed that MoneyGram deal, and MoneyGram hadn't started using them yet. And then like, if not for MoneyGram, Mercury FX was like transferring like $10,000 a day or something like that. So the usage is almost zero. It's not very hard to go up 1,100% from almost zero. But if you actually compare it to earlier this year, back in May and June, it's basically dropped like 80% or something. So because of that, I think Ripple actually saw the writing on the wall that like banks weren't using them, and even someone like MoneyGram would actually cut off much of their usage if they didn't incentivize MoneyGram to use them. There is no plans behind plans. There's no like secret strategy or anything. It's just that the banks aren't using them, and then MoneyGram, which is their primary user, actually stopped using 80% of the usage. So that's why the liquidity really dropped off, especially in their biggest corridor. And that's actually why they're actually pivoting, because they actually need to they need to increase liquidity somehow outside of getting big clients and institutions to use them, because the big clients and institutions just aren't really playing along and they're not actually using them. So they actually need to find a way to do that without. And that's why they're actually going into DeFi. And that's also the reason they're using Flare, because they know that Codius native smart contracts on XRP would actually take a while to develop, so they actually partner with a third party. And then, Codius is definitely desperately trying to build a bridge into Ethereum, so XRP might be able to take some Ethereum's market in terms of DeFi. Not really sure that's how that's going to work. There's a lot more competition there than there is for the international remittances, which is only like them competing with XLM. But of course Swift, but Swift's not really blockchain. But in DeFi, there's so many new blockchains with technology that's just as good competing with it. So I'm not really sure how that's actually going to work. Plus, those blockchains actually have native smart contracts where they're using a third party with Flare. So that's kind of what I see right now, and that's kind of what the numbers and the graphs actually show. Like ODL right now, their pivoting strategy, not focusing solely so much on ODL because ODL needs liquidity, and since they can't get banks and these remittance companies to actually provide liquidity because they're not willing to really use XRP at this point, I think they're pivoting to DeFi to actually bring that liquidity up. Remember, banks may not have the regulations to use ODL, but MoneyGram, Western Union, and other money remittance transmitters actually do have the regulations clear to use ODL, and they're just not doing it. So there's, like with all the savings they actually say that they could actually provide, I don't think that actually pans out in real life. I think those are under very idealistic situations. So right now, I really think if you're an XRP investor, you really need to hope that their DeFi plan actually works out because that is their plan B pivot, and I'm not really sure how much of a plan C they actually have. But anyways, I think XRP is still a decent hold long term, but there is a lot more risk associated with it now than there was before. So that's the report for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe and hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.